we have a session of this tomorrow too, right?
Yes, we do.
So I was thinking we talk a little bit about what we have here so far, and maybe we sort of go more into details tomorrow. We also only have 30 minutes right now. But I think I mentioned in the Slack channels, I did set up some of these umbrella issues or whatever they're called now in the new project plan. But if you go into the ATS version 10 project, and it's one of the new projects, not the legacy ones, I started adding in some of these things. I saw some other people put some stuff in there too, so that's good. And here's what I'm thinking, maybe Alan, if you have things that we should work on for 10, put that in here too, maybe somewhere.
All right.
And there's a few things here that I found, and I think there's a few things. I think, for example, the traffic manager is mostly done, right? So that can maybe be removed or closed. And there's a few others that you put one in there to remove the Inc. UDP XX APIs. And so we don't have to go into all of the details here. But one thing, speaking of APIs, and maybe you should add it to your list there, Brian. I still don't like that we have that. Remember, we have the experimental.h file.
Yep.
And it's just a mess, and no one uses it, as far as I know. We really should do something about that one, I think. So next slide here. I know Jason, we've been talking a lot, and Walt too, talking a lot about what should we do with the APIs, right? And a couple of the things: do we keep the C++ APIs? Do we turn the C APIs into a C++ API, essentially, making it so you can't compile plugins anymore with a C compiler? Those are two big decisions to make, I think. And
yeah, to start off, I'd say the one thing I didn't quite see here, which I know me and Brian Call have talked a lot about, is having a .so for plugins to link with. Because no matter what the current API as it is, we have stuff that's actually compiled into traffic server, and a linker can't link against traffic server itself. So just having the simple change of moving the code around, so when I, link our plugin, whatever that might be, like VZ connection, I can have the compiler say, no missing symbols. And that's a huge, big win right there.
So essentially, you want to turn traffic server itself into basically a hollow shell that just DLL loads some other .so. It doesn't have any real symbols.
Yeah, it should be that way. I mean, arguably, I if I had a picture, which I had given to some other people, the idea is that traffic server should be like a thing that calls a traffic server.so or traffic server engine.so, because all the code's really in there for the internal stuff. And then we have another SO, which is our plugin API, whatever that stuff that we want people to publicly access. That would be in that SO. And then there might be something like libswak or like what TS API, or I forget what we call it right now, but which is the object glue code, right? That we need in the internal engine, but we also need it for the plugins.
Well, I think what you're saying is that we would essentially at least move Inc. API into a shared plugin.
Yes.
Inc. API CC'd into plugin.
Into a .so, yeah.
Yeah, into a .so, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, there is an issue. We talked about it yesterday too at the PR issue scrub. So Brian created an issue for it.
And
9705.
Right, and Alan sort of did this by, since we're moving a lot of the core stuff now into libswak, for example, then the plugin would just link with libswak, presumably.
Well, it would link with libswak and whatever functions we expect them to talk to traffic server for, like, creating a session or whatever it might be, right?
Right. I mean, essentially anything that's in the ts.h and tsremap.h needs to be at least stubbed into ts into this plugin SO. Right, but is ts.h, does that contain all the the debugging messages and warning messages? No, we separate that. There's two files. There's a what is it called, not conf.def or something like that. So there's a file which has all the type defs and all the defines and enums and all that shit.
API
that's-
def.h.
Yeah, I forget what it is. I know Walt did a bunch of work with trying to clean up the debugging messages and stuff that we'd want to have
Right. But
for logging.
all-
But we need to expose that to plugins as well.
Right. So all the plugins would use the stuff that's all the stuff that the plugin uses from TS API would be in Inc API.cc. Now, like Alan said, people are cheating, right? So when I write stuff, there's shit in the core that I want. So I go through hoops and I find the right include file, and then I just use the stuff in the core. And that's always not great for the reasons that you say, Jason, because you can't verify that it's actually going to be linking properly. But
Well, we get around that because people have to compile the plugin against what we install, right? So unless we add that to the header files that are in the install directory, the install whatever install root include directory for traffic server, they can't access those things.
yeah, but that's
Internally, the traffic server, we cheat a lot more, right?
That's only right, but that's only true for plugins that are not part of the core. Header rewrite and other plugins actually grab stuff out of the core without having them exposed as API public APIs.
Yeah, and I would say we should slap our hands on that and stop it. But
there's no. I mean, other than copying code, right? That's the only way to do it. But
doesn't that say we have a problem that we should fix then? Because
we are, and that's
it's like we are special, but everyone else isn't.
Right, but that's what Alan said. So a lot of the stuff that I've been stealing, for example, is what's the class, Alan? The IP stuff.
The Inc inet stuff.
inet stuff, right? So that stuff is really useful in plugins, and we never exposed it into the C APIs because they are C++ APIs. So we didn't have any good ways to do it. And rather than re-implementing that whole slew of code, right, in every plugin, people just, and at least I do, you just go in and nab it and use it. And now with libswap, we don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, it's not a panacea, but it's a big step forward.
It's a big step forward. And then we can obviously go through and do more work. This doesn't to be I think that the big decision here is if we say, hey, the C API is no longer a C API, it's a C++ API. Then we can start doing what you want, Jason, right? We can find the pieces that people want out of the core and move them into the appropriate include files in the appropriate library, shared library, and
no, I think that's great. But maybe just to jump down to a bullet point, if we did that, right, we make all the C API technically compile as a C++ API.
Yeah.
The question then is, do we want to wrap that in a namespace so we get some extra protection going forward? And then two, is it going to be a concern for people who have a plugin that compiles as C? They're going to have to recompile and redo the way they do their compile because it's like, the names will be mingled now, right? It gives us a lot more flexibility, but it's a big, and we could argue, 10's doing this, it's a big change as far as what they expected in all the previous versions of traffic server.
Right. Well, that's the question, right? We need to see how big that should, because I'm not saying that we should change the APIs. And maybe we shouldn't even do the namespace then. We need to discuss that, right?
Well, I'm just saying something simple as TS plugin init, right? If that's extern C, that's still C API. If we if there's no C extern C on that thing, and you're compiling everything in C++, the old code that's doing C code will not be able to compile and link with that stuff correctly. That has to be all upgraded to C++. I don't have a problem with it, but maybe
for sure. So we can no longer compile with C compilers. You have to, if you have a plugin written in C, you have to compile it with C++ and do whatever changes you need to do to compile it with C++.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
I like to say, stop calling things CC, call them C++, because CC is like C people trying to be C++, but they're not committing to it.
Right. And I would venture a guess that there's not a ton of C plugins out there in the wild. We have a few in the core that we can I'm sure we can fix. And I'm also willing to bet that the changes that people have to do in their plugins, even if it's a C plugin, is pretty marginal as long as we don't change the APIs, right? We don't go away from whatever. We don't start introducing class pointers in the old APIs and stuff like that. We keep the old stuff the way it is, at least for now. And then it's just the namespace, right? Which means you do need to do the C++ compiling.
If there's one thing, I mean, for me, the hill I want to die on is I want to have a plugin. I don't know what we want to call it, but plugin.so that we link with.
Right.
And there might be 2 or 3, but as long as we can get the, verify symbols linking switch there, and then we can do, I forget what it's called exactly, but as needed, I think it's called. That solves the biggest problems I tend to have with compiling the plugins, because it provides us, even if we have 3 SOs you have to link with, if you only need one of them, the linker will throw out the 2 you don't.
Right.
But if there's a symbol missing, that's found at compile and link time, and I don't have to deal with it was running through weeks ago, but I don't know why it's not doing it now because someone made a change to some code.
Right. No, I agree with that. That's definitely something we can work on. And I think simply moving in API.cc, I don't know where it goes now. Does it go into a library island, or does it go into the core directly? Where does it go?
InkAPI.cc goes directly into traffic server binary.
Yeah, so just moving that sucker out into a .so would give you like most of the stuff that you're asking for, Jason.
Yeah, but you also have to do something with all the symbols that it also depends on.
Yeah, so again, what I'm really asking for is if we can compile traffic server with, the verify symbol flag I'm talking about, then I'm happy. And that's really the only requirement I'm having, because that means all the plugins and traffic server itself is verifying the symbols in the thing it's linking with exist. And that solves a huge amount of problems from my perspective.
Sure, but Brian, we don't need to do the verification when we link the Ink API SO, right? We don't have to, as long as it has to include direct files, it will get the definitions. It doesn't have to resolve at the time of linking TS plugin or SO or whatever we call it, right? That's something that Jason wants to do for the plugin, but when we build it, we don't have to do that.
I think technically we don't, but it would probably be better if we did.
Well, it's something we can look into. So I know Walt had concerns about switching to C++, turning it into C++ for ABI compatibilities, and I don't know if there's a way to resolve that. I don't know, us being careful, but I know, Brian, you spent some time using some tools to identify ABI breakage.
Yeah, and this is exactly the great call, right? Because it makes the tool easier to use if we do this right.
Yeah, I think we need to continue running the ABI checker. We haven't run it on the 9.2 releases, or the 9.2 release, so we need to go ahead and do that. And then any other releases that come out, we need to make sure we do that. So that way we stay binary compatible between versions. And this is kind of some of the weirdness that came up, is that it starts using different registers when calling functions. And my theory is that it's because we're statically linking everything into traffic server, and some of that will hopefully change when we actually have a plugin.so.
Are people willing to work on this in a 10-node time frame, or how much
we do have
the 10-node
time? We do have someone that's actually assigned to work on this. And we met on Monday, and then we talked about it a little bit yesterday too. So this is Zenji is actually working on this.
At a minimum, we need to get the sort of framework in place, right? Even if you don't do a complete refactoring of everything and making Jason happy, maybe we can at least get started, and then he can be happy during the lifetime of 10.0 at least, and not have to wait for 11.
Yeah, I think the first phase is that we're trying to figure out what symbols we need for the plugins, get that documented. Where does the code that actually defines the actual definition exist? Right. And then we could talk about how we fix the build at that point.
That's what I'm saying. Almost all of the C APIs are in InkAPI.cc.
Yeah.
The implementations, the stuff that's defined in TS.h, almost all of that is implemented in InkAPI.cc.
Yeah, and one simple fix, like I think you're pointing out here, and I think we talked about this years ago, is that one possible quick fix to this whole thing is we just change the build. I think everything underneath the proxy directory, if I have it right, just becomes an SO. And that sort of is like get you there, right? And it does that thing. Traffic service and traffic server and traffic layout are just shims now that talk to proxy.h or proxy.so, whatever we want to call it, because all that code's there. And then what we want to extract from there to being public can be talked about. Do like a public SO of what we want to call that as being the official API, but it gives us the ability to make the jump of, oh, we can still cheat and get to internal APIs internally. And the people who are doing things correctly won't see that because they won't have the definitions, but
Right.
we still have that flexibility of going both ways and migrating over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
The thing on that is,
but
though is that, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the stuff that's so Ink API is mostly a wrapper, right? A shim or whatever you want to call it on top of the core. I think it'll be a lot of work to isolate all those dependencies that Ink API has. Moving all of that into a SO would be a lot of work.
Yeah, and that's my concern because one of my first talks I did was about the build and source layout, and I feel that that's going to be like it's a rabbit hole that you start going down to. So,
well, but
if we can make more SOs, that might make it easier, and then we can talk about untangling over time.
Well, what if we start a little less boiling ocean here and say we do give you your public API plugin that does include the Ink API. You don't get all the stuff that you're asking for, but at least it's a step in direction. Because the key thing here is we change the stuff that's public right now, right? That needs to be changed for 10.
Okay, yeah. So I guess when you're asking that, are we able to, as long as we can compile a plugin and verify symbols, then yes, I'm happy. But I guess my concern is that what I thought I heard was that we can give you like maybe 80% of that into an SO, but then the other stuff, like maybe the logging messages or some other stuff that we tend to use won't be there, which means then I'm still back at, square zero because I can't turn the switch on because I have these other 5 functions that are used in common, but we can't move them over easily.
I think it'll be less than 20%. I think, like especially with libswak, a good chunk of our core, and you should look at that, Alan, see what plugins are using some of these internal APIs that should be rewritten into using libswak, and then put that as tasks, right, for 10.0, and then hopefully we can get rid of all sort of unsupported use of the core.
Well,
yes, that would bring us quite far.
Yeah, I think we have to get it defined first. We can't really say what's what until we know what's there and what's needed. Because I think once we have the definition, which is for phase 1, I think we can make intelligent choices. Because a lot of these if, ands, or buts may be a big deal. Maybe they're not. And I don't know until we actually have a clear definition of what that is.
Well, InkINet is one of the bigger ones because it's, like I said, it's so handy. So we can get rid of that. The second most common one is people reaching for InkConf for InkDefs. I know I've seen Chris do that, where they want to look at the stuff that came out of autoconfig to decide about system properties. Right. So we have that. That's number 2 thing that we're reason people reach into the core, into those private headers.
That might just be a matter of making those, because those are generated at H files, right? Maybe just make those part of the TS install directory, where maybe yes, right?
That's certainly something we could do. Yes.
Let me put on here too.
Isn't ink config already available? What did I do? I there was one that wasn't, and I switched it to one that was.
I can't remember. I know that. Yeah, I know you're not. I just like to pick on you, Chris. To be.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, we all do that.
You're hardly the only one. It's really a common thing that people want to know: does it have this header? Does it have that header? Does it have this property? What property? And they reach over and grab that. But I don't think it's in a place that gets installed. Here's the key thing: is it installed with the SDK, or do you need to have the source on the same place you're building your plugin?
I don't believe it's installed with the SDK.
So that's the key difference. Because my memory is the same as Jason's, that if you do an install, you don't see any of those files there.
Yeah, these were internal ones. So
yeah,
maybe that's why I was getting away with it in the first place.
Yeah. yeah, people get away with that. I'd like to have it be a little more more official. Anyway, now with transaction box, because I use clever C++ tricks to do this rather than looking at the comp stuff. But
yeah, do we want to long term depend on the conf stuff, or do we want to move to the more nice C++ features where we can check for headers?
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I think the number one thing, if we want to move towards C++ features, but the first thing we should do, which is easy for everyone, is to use the has include rather than looking at the comp stuff. Right, that's the template-y stuff you have to do some of these things. It's not trivial, but the have include is.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that. All the compilers we support today have that capability. So do we have math at age is something we can check for at the compile time, not with a config check.
That would be nice too for the CMake work, right? If we can decouple some of the shit from the autoconf and config state and rather into whatever compile state it may be, that would be beneficial.
I agree.
What do we do with the C++ APIs though? Do we want to mark them as deprecated for 10 and remove them in 11?
Which one in particular?
Well, the whole shebang, the one that's
the geffinated stuff.
The geffinators.
I'd love to kill that. I contributed to that early on. It's my biggest sin in this whole project that I've committed. It was a terrible mistake.
Yeah, I'm fine with getting rid of it. We only have one plugin, I think, that actually uses it, and Walt owns it. So I'm pretty sure you could change it pretty quickly.
Now, what I'd like to suggest, if people actually are interested in this, is go look at Transaction Box and its TS util headers. I would like to have something very, very similar to that, or just copy that out to make the new C++ API. It's bottom up, not top down. It just wraps everything in nice little C++ wrappers. I know Walt's looked at that, and Walt and I had some technical disagreements about references versus other things, so we'd have to work that out. But
keep cleanup.h. That actually only depends on the current TS API. So
right. So that's what we talked about it yesterday, Walt. So I that's fine. And I think what we would do then is we essentially we marked all. It's a little clunky now, right? Since we started moving in new stuff in under the CPP API directory. Maybe what we do then, Walt, is just move the stuff that we need to keep, move that into the regular include/TS.
Yeah.
And since we're switching to C++ compiler, you don't have to worry about them being C++, right? Everything under include TS should be considered being C++.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so we're gonna deprecate it for 10 then and remove it for 11.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think that's good. Of course, all this stuff needs to go to the mailing list, but
Yeah, of course. I'm just writing it down here, using this as a scratch pad here. Can you still see that screen, by the way, or no?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else do we want to talk about now, Brian?
So OS support, I'll just hit on that since that's where I don't want to miss that. We have to support Red Hat 7. As much as I wish it would die, I don't see that dying in the time frame it should die in. So at least 2 more years, I figure I'm going to be stuck with the Red Hat 7 stuff.
But what does that mean though? Because you're obviously not using the compilers and the libraries from CentOS 7, right? You're using some dev
right.
tools.
So I guess at the moment for me, for at least the next 6 months to a year, I need to be able to support compiling with 8.3. After that, I can move up to like 12.
I think it's better to say, so you're saying GCC 8, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 8.3 explicitly, but you might remember hearing Alan complain that 8.3 and 8.5 compiled stuff differently a little bit, but 8.3 is unfortunately what I'm stuck with for at least 6 months.
Hey, Sue, what are you compiling with? Okay, Sue, you still there?
Who's right?
Ubuntu 18.
What GCC?
Oh, that was a 7.5.
Oh God!
Oh my!
Well, we already said that the minimum requirement is C++ 17, right? So anything that doesn't do C++ 17, you're SOL. It doesn't matter what version you're on.
I think there's a toolchain 8 for Ubuntu 18. So That might be okay.
Yeah. I think so too. But the main issue for me is 8.3, and LibSwalk has to support 8.3 without breaking stuff when you make new drops, because that's caused me pain for the last 2 weeks.
But that's 8.3 for our existing ATS 9. I mean, ATS 10, can't we just do GCC 11?
I have to make a whole new compile stack, which is what I propose to do here. But my concern is right now is, politics in the company. So
Well, I think RHEL 7 does support GCC 11, doesn't it, through a dev toolset, or is that?
Yes,
no,
it does.
it does, but I have to compile everything with it then, because going between 8 and 9, the compiler breaks ABI.
I see.
Yeah, it's like 9 and 10 are compatible, 7 and 8 were compatible, but going from 8 to 9, things break. And then I was saying 10 and 11 both broke each other when you went up them. So I have no problem updating stuff. It's just the migration path. I can't just come and say, oh, I recompiled everything with the stuff, and then all these other people complain that their code stopped working.
So what is it that's breaking in libswalk then? So I assume then that GCC 8.3 is fully C++ 17.
It's the thing I put in my slides with the string view constructor. It's not resolving ambiguities correctly. Apparently, it's something they fixed in 8.5. It thinks constructor is ambiguous, and it's not.
So it's a bug in GCC 8.3.
I think so. Yes, it's kind of an obscure case. Anyway,
Or we blame Red Hat for it. I mean, I don't know.
I gave Jason a workaround for it. It's just annoying. It's not a showstopper.
I would hate for you to, or for us as well, to start making hacks to support something like, how old is GCC 8.3? They got to be like 5-6 years old at least.
Yeah, but this is why people use Red Hat, because it's old and they think it's stable.
Yeah, but we made a decision like for 9 that was going to be C++ 17, and any compiler that isn't adhering to the C++ 17 standard can't be used.
Okay, so we're compiling everything with C++ 17, and I guess the question is is the 17 support as good as it should be? And that's a difficult issue.
Standard file system.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Alan. Because if I compile with GCC 9, I have standard file system. GCC 8 does not.
Right, but so it does GCC 8.5 solve your problems, and you can't go to GCC 8.5?
Red Hat doesn't provide a 8.5.
There's no dev tool set with 8.5?
No, just 8.3.
Let's build your own GCC 8.5 then.
Yeah, well, if I go to Red Hat 8, I get 8.5. But I have people who are stuck on 7 for a long period of time.
I get that. Can't you build 8.5 yourself for CentOS 7?
I'm afraid that will cause a breakage. I think it's safer for me to recompile a new set of RPMs with a different namespace with the newer compiler and just go to 12 or 11 or whatever we can go up to. That's simpler to do and tell everyone else to stop using the old code. But I need a window of time to make that migration, is all I'm saying.
Well, 10 is not going to be out for at least another 3-4 months would be my guess, right? So there's a window right there.
Well, okay, that's fair enough. I guess in my mind, we already have 10 builds, and we're already starting to take a look at that stuff. It's like your traffic server removing what traffic manager. We've done that already, and hopefully that will get in, because I'm expecting that to be the case.
It just seems unfair to me that since we agreed that C++ 17 is the minimum bar, and I mean, we can't just accept anyone coming in. I understand that Yahoo is one of the bigger players here, so maybe you're an exception, but you can't just accept people coming in and say, hey, I want to use GCC 8.3.2. It has this bug in C++ 17, so you need to fix your code for that.
No, I understand. It's just that when we did the stuff, 8 was the latest of the things, right? So I'm not disagreeing with you. I am not against what you're saying.
GCC gotta be older than us deciding to go C++ 17. When did we choose C++ 17, Brian? For 9?
I don't remember. I think it's been a while. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look at our release notes.
I don't remember either. Maybe it was I8.
I thought it was 8 or 9 we did it. I forget exactly.
I mean, looking at GCC
7 was 11, right? And then I think we've got aggressive went to 17, and then we found standard file system was a concern, and we became a little more conservative.
Right. Yeah, it's always been a pain, right? There's been poor implementations of C++ 17. We know that, but yeah, look at GCC 8.3. It's not that old. It's only from 2019, so it's only like 4 years old. And so do we want to change this then? Because we got rid of the sort of, we used to say, hey, we support CentOS 6 or 7 or whatever, right? That's our minimum bar. We got rid of that and said, hey, the requirement is really on the feature set, like C++ 17 with these features. Do you want to go back and say for 10 that we should support GCC 8.3?
Right now, I feel 8.3, but I guess the question is that I was saying 8.3. I thought Susan or Keys were saying 7. So how is that going to be? How many of you guys view that? Because you guys are going older than I was.
I don't even think we're testing 7 in CI at all. So, I mean, it's possible that we're going to be checking in code that breaks GCC 7.
Yeah, so I'm going 8.3, but I'm not the oldest. So I'm just saying, who was the guy saying the oldest? And I think that was Aviatrix. So
Yeah, but we might look at other tools, other toolchain 8 or 9. So if we have to move, then we'll have to move.
Looking at CentOS 7.
and I'm fine if we were to make a compromise and say 10, we have to have 8.3, but we're going to make a 10.1 later, like 6 months after that, and we expect 8.5 or 9 at that point, because that gives people time to move.
And we try to not do that sort of, we kind of promise to be compatible, right? When we do go from 10.0 to 10.1.
Okay, I'm just throwing it out there. If it doesn't stick, I'm fine with that too. So.
So you okay with that, Alan? GCC 8.3 sounds like you are the one that's
I've already
suffering
paid the
most.
price, so it doesn't bother me now.
Well, we haven't upgraded everything because we have to add that little with something in the code, and that still has to be propagated.
Yeah. Oh, I thought I put that in this morning. Anyway.
Well, no, your code's fine. It's still not on Traffic Server 10. I don't believe it's in 10 yet officially, because we have those PRs up for it in the.
Anyway, yeah. Well, I thought talk to me offline because I thought the one you put up I'd already fixed that. You got to fix the formatting because I can't freaking tell what you did in that PR.
What do you mean format? I called the formatting code inside Traffic Server to do it.
I don't know.
It wasn't me.
But there's huge set of differences that aren't really differences anyway.
There's one line change in there, I agree, and then I ran the CLang format, make CLang format, and that's the only file that changed. And all I did was add one line. I don't know what happened to the rest of it.
All right.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense. I looked at that PR too; it looked so bizarre.
I don't know what to say about it. I just thought we were behind on calling format. But I'm fine to go back and unformat it and put that one line in there, and then somebody else can deal with that pain.
Even
Yeah,
when you turn on
sometimes
ignore white space differences, it's still. Have you tried turning on ignore white space differences?
Well, but we don't want to commit those.
Yeah.
I just ran the makefile because I was told by Leif years ago this is the official mechanism for doing it. And
that's
I thought we even had a commit hook.
So sometimes you gotta. I don't know. I've had to do this before. I delete the Git hook and that directory inside .git where it stores all the Clang format executables, and then reinstall that. Run make Clang format. It'll refetch the Clang format and the right.
Try that.
Okay, I'll update my PR on that thing. That's fine. I just was.
I have a hard stop here right now, so I need to go away. But we continue this. This is good. I marked down everything on that keynote there, and I'll put this in an email when we're done after tomorrow as well. But we have more stuff to discuss, I think, tomorrow, Brian.
Yes, definitely.